Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another esoteric concept. We are going to make this public here on Facebook. All right. Welcome to another esoteric podcast. I'm your host, John Yah, and today we're going to have an exciting show for you. We're going to be talking about vitamin D and the importance of vitamin D on all aspects, from the source where it comes from, and we're going to be talking about the functions that it have in the body, what it's for. We're going to be talking about vitamin D, vitamin 2, and vitamin D, which is what most melanated people talk about most, is the vitamin D3. Okay. What I want to first is thank people who made this happen. Without them, this would not have been able to be pulled off. Attorney Carl Price with Conscious Fever and Ice Entertainment Radio, Joe Tapper with the Tipping Point Radio Show, morning show on Facebook and LOU, and Health Daddy Wild, Frank Stoner, where you can get your herbs and all your teas right here in Louisville, Kentucky. Carrie Muhammad, which is with Incredible graphic guy. He does hell of a work. And Phyllis Myers with Body Energy Works. If you need your body worked on here in Louisville, Kentucky, that's who you want to reach out to. Okay. Now, if you are on Facebook, I want to remind everybody that you can go to YouTube also and find us right there on YouTube at Esoteric Podcast with John Yah. A lot of times we're having some problems with pumping our information out on Facebook because we're either being blocked or screened. So, but that's okay, because we will eventually move our whole show eventually over to YouTube. Okay. So anyway, today's concept and today's talk is going to be with Dr. Akmal, and you can find this subject every Tuesday right here. If you don't see it on Facebook, come on over to YouTube where you will definitely find us. So with that said, I want everyone that's watching the show, click like, click share, give us a thumbs up on YouTube so that we can keep this information going. And here's why it's important, because we're bringing you information from a holistic viewpoint about how to heal yourself, and information that you're not going to hear from the white coat doctor. I guarantee you, it's information that every time we're talking about something, you're not going to hear it from the white coat doctor. So stay tuned. What we're giving and what we're offering you is free. Again, if you have any comments for the doc, put it in. I will try to get to as many as I can to get him to answer your comments. Okay. If anybody got any comments, any questions, go ahead on and click in. So without no further ado, I want to bring in the brother, Dr. Akmal. Brother Akmal, how are you doing today? You got yourself on mute, brother.
Going on here. All right, there we go. How you doing?
I'm great, brother.
And welcome to the people who tuned in for us this week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Listen, man, this is a good subject we're getting ready to have about the vitamin D3, which everyone's talking about. And a lot of times the melanated people talk about most. We want to get into definitely where it's from, where it comes from. But first, Doc, I want you to tell us what is vitamin D3?
Well, let me start off this way. We're moving towards the summer, and we have to think about the micronutrients that establish the body and how they function within the season, and so when we start talking about micronutrients, we're basically talking about minerals and vitamins. Okay, they're called micronutrients, and vitamin D is one of the micronutrients. We also want to make sure that we have an understanding that the body is a chemistry factory, and we're the chemist. And, you know, these chemistries that's within the compounds of the body have to function synergistically. In other words, they have to function together in order for them to be able to maintain and establish homeostasis, which is life. So, you know, when we start looking at, you know, nutrients, and when we start to look at the factor of especially vitamin D, okay, we have to look at where's it coming from, how are we getting it, what is it, what does it do, how does it do what it needs to do, you know, because when we discuss this, you know, it's one of the micronutrients that, like you said, has been in the forefront. Everybody now is talking about vitamin D and vitamin D3. Well, if we understand the factor that vitamin D is a large part of our life, okay, whether we want to deal with that or not, it is. I mean, you go outside and the sun hits you, that's vitamin D. You eat foods like mushrooms, that's vitamin D. That's vitamin D2. You eat fish, that's vitamin D. Why are we so dependent on vitamin D? Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin that's also a hormone. Okay. And it has those qualities because it actually aids in the regulation of insulin in the pancreas. So when we look at that, we look at it on one side, it's a vitamin which are also called coenzymes. So what it does is it helps other elements or other minerals and vitamins to get into the system. So when we start looking at that, we have to look at the first places that is coming through the skin. Okay. In us melanated people, it comes into the skin and our skin absorbs it. The more melanin we have, the more absorption that we can get it from the sun, although it moves through there. The less melanin that someone has, the more that they get it, the more they're susceptible to cancer, because of the fact that vitamin D can cause cancer in people who are not as melanated. Okay. So we have to understand that black dot that we call melanin is very powerful in its ability to maintain and hold on to vitamin D. Vitamin D, what it does, and vitamin D3 specifically, what it does is it assists calcium, magnesium, zinc, phosphorus to get into the body, so that what happens is that now the body is able to provide immunity. So when we look at vitamin D, we have to look at it in terms of its ability to help us with immunity, because of the fact that it aids the calcium so that the calcium can maintain the integrity of the bones. The bones we have to look at has to do with the stem cells on one side and the DNA on the other. So when we start talking about stem cells, what are we talking about? We're actually talking about our immune system. When we talk about DNA, we're now talking about ancestralhood, because of the fact that our DNA comes from them people that walked the earth before us.
Right.
So when we start looking at vitamin D, we have to look at the fact that one of its biggest jobs is the absorption the assistance of absorption in the small intestines of calcium and phosphorus.
So it almost sounds like the vitamin D is a carrier.
It is, but it's also powerful in its ability to help maintain the balance of the blood because of the phosphorus and the calcium. And so within that, now when you start to look at the fact of that it will increase the absorption of zinc. Okay. You have to look at the fact that zinc helps to boost the immune system and helps to get rid of inflammation. So here, vitamin D is working to help get rid of pathogens in the body. So not only is it a carrier, but it comes through us genetically. Okay. Because of the fact that it helps to maintain the integrity of our DNA.
When people talk about vitamin D coming from the sun, are we talking about vitamin D3, where the body converts the rays from the sun into vitamin D?
We are. See, vitamin D comes from maybe three sources: the sun, fatty foods, fish that's oily or fatty, liver, okay, and in some cases beef and milk, okay, are sources of vitamin D3.
And egg yolk.
Now, vitamin D2 comes from mushrooms, and you can get some of it from things like yeast, okay, nutritional yeast. Okay, those are the two forms that you can get it in. Now, with that, when you start looking at it in that manner, it's not as powerful as D3.
Okay.
D3. Oh, also you can get D2 in foods that have been fortified.
Okay.
You know, you see that on the side of some of the packages that this is fortified. That yes, fortified with D3.
Explain that. What does that mean, fortified?
That means that in some cases they've taken out one set of nutrients and put another set in there to fortify them. In another sense, it says that particular, and mostly grains, you'll see this on, that the grains do not have the amount needed for a specific nutrient. So what they do is they fortify it. They add more synthetically to it.
Oh, okay.
So that you can get some of it.
Okay.
So the body tries to break that down. You see that in cereals, and you see that in milk cartons, where they say fortified with vitamin D.
Yes.
And so what they're doing is they're putting in vitamin D2. What the research talks about is the fact that vitamin D3 will go into the system, into the body, and it will increase D3 for people who are deficient, easier and quicker than D2. And you gotta understand part of why that is. Part of that has to do with digestion. You know, and a large part of that has to do with digestion. Whether you're eating fish or beef or something of that nature, or whether you're eating cereal grains, your digestive tract determines how quick it's going to break down and absorb into your body.
Okay.
As we age and the digestive tract reduces, what happens? What happens is that now we start to have issues with absorbing D vitamins, as well as some of the other vitamins. Certain medications inhibits the ability of vitamin D to happen. For instance, if you're low in magnesium, vitamin D assists magnesium in getting into the body, but also magnesium helps vitamin D get into the body, and vitamin D has to function, especially D3 has to function with fatty foods. So if you're taking a supplement, then you should be then with that supplement you should be eating something that's fatty. Whether it's you're taking some olive oil, okay, or eating an avocado, or something of that nature. What happens is that helps with the absorption. See, we have to understand that whole piece about us being chemists.
Yeah.
Okay, because of the fact that, you know, if we really begin to understand and deal with the fact of what chemistry is happening in our body, we can understand how to heal the body. When we start talking about D3, D3 can help with the eyes, okay, as well as it can help with the reproductive system. We have to look at the fact that with D3, what is the levels that we have in the body, and what are the levels that we need to take in order to enhance that? Because it also has to deal with the mind. The fatty tissue of the mind works within the compounds of the D. And the interesting thing about D3 in the liver, and especially D3 in the liver, is the fact that with D3 in the liver, D3 is converged in the liver. With it being in the liver, it works in conjunction with glutathione. Glutathione is a real powerful antioxidant. Okay. And that antioxidant aids in the ability to reduce cancer. Well, we know vitamin D does as well. So when those two are working together, what happens? What begins to happen is that now you wind up having ultimate health, because of the factor that those two have worked together. You know, if you're overweight, if you've got issues with your bowels, Crohn's disease, colitis, you should begin to repair those first, so that you're able to receive vitamin D. Irritable bowel syndrome, all of those kinds of things. And especially if you got stuff going on with your gallbladder. Because if you got some stuff going on with your gallbladder, what can happen is, if the gallbladder is not able to secrete bile into the small intestines for whatever reason, then your body won't absorb vitamin D, because bile has a fatty substance to it. Matter of fact, it emulsifies fat. And so with that happening, when you put that in, what happens? What begins to happen now is the body will reject the vitamin D3 because the bile isn't there to help it break it down in the small intestines. And we got to understand that the small intestines is the place of absorption for vitamin D and other nutrients. Matter of fact, on one side it's a garbage dump, on the other side is where we get our nutrients from that goes into the blood. So if we begin to understand that, then what we understand is that we understand that we need to take certain levels of vitamin D. Most physicians talk about vitamin D and they give 5,000 to 50,000 IUs, and it comes IUs or micrograms. Okay, IUs means that it's international units, which have to do with oils. That's how oils are measured. So the IU for standard women and men is 200 IUs. For men and women who are 50 to 70, the IUs are 400 IUs. For people 70 and older, they should take 600 IUs of vitamin D.
So what would justify taking 5,000 IU? You know, I remember when I first became aware of vitamin D3 some years ago, you couldn't find 5,000 IUs. It was the most, it was 1,000 IUs. Then I heard a black doctor talk about a black person, because we're living in this hemisphere, that we need to take 5,000 IUs a day, both in the wintertime, that is. So after that, you started seeing 5,000 IUs in a bottle.
Yeah, and that's so that you'll get some that will increase your vitamin D levels, but it doesn't allow always for it to enhance other nutrients that it needs to enhance. Matter of fact, when you take large amounts of vitamin D, it also allows for harmful nutrients to be absorbed, like cadmium. You know, a lot of people have high blood pressure and they can't figure out why the medication is not working. And then a lot of times it's not just the medication, but it's cadmium, which has now become part of their bloodstream, which now is elevating their blood pressure. It allows for lead. And it's real interesting because with calcium, calcium binds lead. In other words, it won't, if you in a place where the water that you're drinking or the paint that's in your house has to deal with lead, the piece of that is that when you start to take supplements of calcium, that binds lead, which means that it won't allow the lead to absorb into the bloodstream. So when you take large amounts of vitamin D, it reduces the ability of calcium to keep lead out.
Wow.
And so with that being the case, what now happens? What now happens is now you got lead poisoning.
Okay.
You see the same thing with aluminum. See, aluminum is, and I said this back in 1974, that aluminum was part of Alzheimer's disease. And now they're coming up talking about aluminum being part of Alzheimer's disease.
They sure are. Yes.
And if people are cooking with lead, with aluminum pots, you need to throw them pots away. That's like that Teflon. You need to get rid of that because of the fact that, matter of fact, there's a picture, there's a movie, and I can't remember the name of it, where it talks about, and it's from true life story. It talks about how that Teflon created cancer and other types of health imbalances that in some cases were deadly because of the Teflon. There's a whole lawsuit and all of it. I can't remember the name of the picture, but there is a picture out there that talks exactly about that.
Let me go somewhere, and this is interesting because when I did some research about vitamin D3 and the regular vitamin D, you always hear, of course, people, and this is to go with people who are vegans that don't eat meat. Now, when I looked up the source of vitamin D3, which is what we're talking about here, one is one is called sun-radiated mushrooms. That's one. The rest are salmon. It is codfish oil, deer liver, and egg yolk. When I used to hear the argument about vitamin D being in vegetables, I see that vitamin D by itself is in spinach, kale, okra, collard greens, soybeans, and white beans. So in other words, there's a difference in the absorption of where we get the source of vitamin D3. And so the rest of the source is coming from, and there was another animal when you look up the supplements, there was another animal. It's like I guess it's one of the animals that is kin to a lamb, where they extract the vitamin D from the skin.
Yeah.
Lima. Yeah. So in a sense, if you're a vegan and you're not eating no meat, where would they get their vitamin D3 from? Would it be a synthetic source?
Well, as you said, they could get it from a food source. They get it from a mushroom.
Yeah, the only one I saw under that list was sun-radiated mushrooms.
Right, and that's and most of that means that the sun has done exactly that, radiated,
right.
Okay, it's not where they put that machine over it and irradiate it, because they do that's a given thing that they're doing with the food. So it's not that, it's nature doing what she does. But when you start to look at that, the other place that you can get that from is sea moss. It's certain sea mosses you can get that from. You can get that from
the vitamin D3.
The vitamin D3.
Gotcha.
Okay. But those are the only sources that you can get them from. The other source has to be from either flesh, or it has to come from a supplement. And people have to realize that supplementation is going to be a big thing soon. Okay, real big. Why? Because of the fact that the quality of the foods that we're eating doesn't have the necessary minerals and vitamins or micronutrients in it that we need to establish our bodies within the changing of the climate. Okay, See, because when we start looking at the changing of the climate, we have to look at what's happening to the food. And are we getting what we need from the food? For instance, if you working to get it from fish, then you have to eat cold water fish. You have to eat fish that come from maybe Alaska or Finland or somewhere like that, where we haven't polluted the water to that extreme, so that you can get it. The other interesting thing about D3 is the fact that it doesn't allow mercury, okay, to absorb. In other words, it doesn't absorb mercury. Okay. And you'll find that mercury's in a lot of the fish that we eat. And so you have to really have an understanding of where your food's coming from and what's the nutritional value of that food. And when you start talking about things like vitamin D, well, the piece of that is that what oils are you going to get that from? Because that's what it is. It's an oil. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some products on the market that with vitamin D3, there's all of the components needed. So vitamin D3 also needs calcium, magnesium, vitamin C, potassium, and boron in order to get into the system.
So people who are taking just the supplement by itself, it ain't doing them any good.
They're not getting the full value of that supplement.
Okay.
See, we have to understand that supplements are synergistic. You know, they work with each other in order to get into the body. And all of them have to have some sort of enzyme to help them to do that, because enzymes are what allows for the body to kind of open and fit that puzzle piece in there. So that what you have now is that you have the ability to receive the nutrient. When you talk about it helping magnesium, well, magnesium is one of those nutrients that has to do with muscle spasms. So if vitamin D3 assists in the ability for magnesium to get into the system, then that means that vitamin D3 also has the ability to assist in the reduction of cardiovascular accidents, strokes. Okay. And it works on the cardiovascular system. When we start to look at D3, we have to look at the fact that D3 moves in several different areas. Matter of fact, almost every cell has D3 in it. Just like almost every cell has phosphorus and calcium. So if that's the case, we have to make sure that we get the D3. The best times to allow yourself to receive D3 is summer. Why? A couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that the body becomes more open and more circulation happens in the summertime. The other part of that is that that's a season for the sea. So that's like if people are taking sea moss, that's the season to take it. The other piece of that is the fact that when you put it in during the summer, what happens is it aids in the fortification of it, so that in the winter time, especially when you're living in the Northeast or someplace where there's not a lot of sun. So in the winter time, what happens? What happens is that now that fortification that you added, you dealt with in the summertime, now is in the bones. And so now the bones can function, and the calcium can now be moved into the blood in such a way where you don't become deficient in the wintertime. You see, when you start talking about it with Minna, when Minna starts to pause, or testosterone, you have to talk about the fact that it has a profound effect on reproductive system. One is because of the bones, and the bones are ruled by the kidneys, and the kidneys rule reproduction. The other is because of the factor of how it functions with the DNA and the stem cells. When we start talking about menopause, what are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that what we call it is the tianque. The tianque, which is the heavenly waters, which is menstruation, has ceased to exist. So because it ceased to exist, now that vitamin D isn't floating in the body in the manner that it should. So because it's not floating in the manner that it should, now what happens? Now what happens is that a woman is susceptible to osteoporosis.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Because it's not circulating. So as women go through menopause, they need to up their game with D3. Because of that. So that will also help with some of them hot flashes, them night sweats. And European women, other than women of color, African descent, have more issues with osteoporosis than African women in the diaspora. And that's because of the fact of the melanation of their skin. So if we begin to look at that, we look at the fact that during summer is one of the best times to put in the D. And to put in the D with all of the components it needs, and to make sure that digestion happens. See, because in the summertime, not only is it the circulation by the heart, but it's also this peak season of the small intestines. And the small intestines has to deal with the absorption and assimilation. You know, the question here is with fibroids. Fibroids is not in that case with vitamin D. You know, fibroids is in a whole different zone. Let me say that a woman would have to work with in terms of fibroids. When I work with women with fibroids, you know, the first thing is that you got to understand that, and from a Chinese perspective, is that your uterus is cold. And so if your uterus is cold, then nutrients that you're taking may not get into the reproductive system. Now, because vitamin D3 has to do with the reproductive system, it doesn't necessarily have to deal with fibroids. Well, let me say this here. In all my research, I haven't seen anything that said that vitamin D worked well with fibroids. Okay. Fibroids have to do with the fact that, from my standpoint, she's not moving. It also has to deal with the fact that in some cases, the calcium that's in the blood is not moving. And so because of that, now you wind up having something that's benign. Now, if D3 does affect that, it could be affecting the factor that it's not fortifying the calcium so that the calcium can be absorbed into the blood. When we talk about the factor of how, vitamin D moves around the body, we have to also talk about the factor that it works itself with what is called the adipose tissue. The adipose tissue is the fatty tissue of the body. And so when there's a lot of fat in the body, then vitamin D can be absorbed well. Even though the digestive tract is off, the issue is that there's an excessive amount of fatty acids in the body. If we look at the issue of deficiency of vitamin D, for children, they would have rickets. Their bones is weak. In adults, we wind up having osteo problems. Okay, those osteo problems can go anywhere from having what you call it, arthritis, through the piece having menopausal issues, to cancer, because of the fact that by it maintaining the balance of the immune system, when that's off, the immune system isn't functioning. So now you need to make sure that that there's fatty acids in there, and you got to make sure that things like zinc, copper are in there, because those are elements that vitamin D help to get into the system. Copper is needed for the central nervous system and the skin. Matter of fact, copper aids in the melanation of the skin. As a person with vitiligo, that's one of the pieces that I put in, is copper, along with vitamin D.
Okay.
And as we moving through spring into summer, this is the time when I work on the vitiligo. And each year that I work on it, each year it gets better, because of the factor of how I'm mixing and matching the minerals and the vitamins.
Here's a question: If you're living in more of the South or in the Caribbean, do you need vitamin D supplements if you're getting the proper sun and you're eating the proper food?
No, because of the factor that, first off, you have to understand this, that the vitamin D coming in from the sun into the body is not only absorbed in the melanation of the skin, but it's also absorbed by the lungs and the large intestines. If you're in one of them countries, and that's been our issue has been the factor that, because we live in a climate that is not well for us, what happens now is that we are in a place where we're not getting enough sun or ultraviolet rays, so that the skin can maintain the balance. Because, like living here in Maryland, so we get 3, maybe 5 months of where we can really get some sun. And so because of that, we have the rest of the months where the sun isn't as hot. So as we live in those kind of climates, as we live in those kind of climates, I just noticed that my batteries are about to run out. As we live in those kind of climates, what we're seeing is we're seeing that we need to have more vitamin D supplementation than when we live in some place like the Caribbean, because of the fact that, one, we're eating foods in the Caribbean, and especially the Caribbean and in Africa, where we're eating foods, apologize for that, where we're eating foods that are indigenous to that area. That makes a great big difference, okay? And because of the fact that the sun is hot, okay? And so when we deal with the fact of how hot the sun is, you know, because you go to the Caribbean and what happens? What happens is that you go there looking pale, and you come back teased and tan and aggravating brown. You looking good, you know? Why? Because that sun has put that copper tone on you. Okay, because that sun is dealing with the factor of the heat. See, because the heat is what opens the pores. And you got to understand that the body is about methylation. Okay, methylation is breathing. That's what methylation is. If you've ever taken any eucalyptus or pineapple comes to mind, but that ain't what I'm looking for. God, it'll come out. But if you take anything of that, peppermint, if you take anything of that nature and you got that methylation, that's what the body does. That's why when you take foods, when you take herbs of that nature, it automatically opens up the lungs. Automatically. Why? Because of the factor that with that, your body breathes. So your cells are breathing. So the methylation that vitamin D causes from the sun on the pigmentation of the body causes the methylation so that the blood circulates to the immune system gets enhanced. In TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, the lungs and the large intestines have to do with the immune system. And it has to do with the immune system, where the immune system lies between the skin and the fascia, or it's actually in the fascia between the skin and the bone and the muscles. So it lies very, very close, so that melanin gets in and it's absorbed in that fatty tissue, so that now it can, one, protect the body, because it protects us from cancer, and two, it can provide the body with what it needs for calcium, so that now the calcium is absorbed, the copper is absorbed, okay, the copper is absorbed, so you have absorption going on. That's going to allow for the body, which are the cells the blood, the tissues, and the organs to be able to uptake vitamin D and allow for the vitamin D to function in the body.
Let me back up for just a second. So you're saying that the immune system is located right beneath our skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what does that say about those who may wear makeup or things that block their skin from breathing?
They're messing with their immune system.
Mm.
That's why last year during the COVID-19, check this out. You know, long haulers, and I do a program with long haulers who are people who have had COVID-19. Okay. Long haulers have a vitamin D deficiency as well as zinc. With the lack of vitamin D, it's not allowing the zinc to get into the system. So now these people are having issues with taste and smell, which is a zinc deficiency.
Mm.
The pain and the muscle spasms they're having has to do with vitamin D's relationship to magnesium. Because magnesium, potassium and magnesium are the two elements in the body that stop spasms. And so when you have muscle spasms, that means either you're low on potassium or you're low on magnesium. Good source of potassium, coconut water.
You got copper. Good source of copper.
And it's a good source of copper.
Okay.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, you know, it's been said that coconut water is holy water. But coconut water will balance the electrolytes in the body.
Yes.
And so people who have hypertension should understand that if they drink coconut water, supplement vitamin D, or eat foods that are rich in vitamin D, then what will happen is that they will begin to see their blood pressure come down. Same thing with people with diabetes and multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis, oh my God. Vitamin D has to do with the myelina sheath. The myelina sheath is the wrapping of the nervous system of the vertebra. It's the fatty acids. And what happens is that they wind up having lesions in them fatty acids because of the fact that they don't have that vitamin D. That's one of them. The other one is that omega-3, 6, and 9 works well as well, and DHEA. But you know, when we start talking about vitamin D is very powerful within the body. And if we take it in the summertime, if we get it in the summertime, and you know, I can't tell people if the doctor told you to take 50,000 units of it, I can't tell you to stop taking it. Okay, I wouldn't do that. You know, I say that the recommendation from the institution of medicine, I ain't saying this, they say this, they did the experiments, is that if you're a woman, you should take 200 milligrams or micrograms or IUs. You should, no matter who you are, you should take no more than maybe 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D3, because you don't want it to You don't want it to be in excess in your body. And you know, in the US, we like excess. We
Yeah.
like more is better. No,
We'll pump it up.
that's like um movie that Snoop Dogg was in, where he was the pilot.
Yeah.
And the cat had, and the brother from Africa had the mushrooms.
Yeah.
And Snoop said, "Oh, I'm gonna get them all." And Snoop wound up going out because of that, you know. And so we had to understand that more is not better. And people should should understand their blood type, because of the fact that also determines how stuff absorbs in your system.
Back to that blood type again.
No question.
Yeah.
You know, if people understand that what they put into their body will show up in their body in the manner that it absorbs and assimilates. That's like we eating all these different food combinations. A lot of that is causing issues. Okay, because we're putting in foods that cancel out each other. And when we start talking about micronutrients, we got to understand the synergistics of that. Because if we don't understand that, then what happens is, and what happens is that when you get to be 50, 60 in your 70s, man, stuff just roll right over you. You know, and things that used to stand up don't stand up no more. Things that stood straight out don't stand straight out no more. Why? Because of the aging process. When you're young, you 20, 30, maybe 40 years old, yeah, you can do certain things, but them things that you do then wind up coming back on you when you get over 50. That's why it's important for people to understand their blood type. It's important to understand how much vitamin D are they getting and how are they getting it. When you take it, you take the most of it during the summer. Now, the other piece that needs to happen, and especially during the summer, is you got to take probiotics. And the reason that you're taking probiotics is because now you're getting the probiotics to function within in the gut, so that the gut can now begin to break down them lipids, which are fats, which is where the absorption of vitamin D comes from.
She wants to know about maca.
Everybody want to know about maca. Yeah, everybody want to know about, because maca now is the go-to thing for sexuality,
for energy. Yeah.
And see, what people don't understand is that when you take stuff of that nature, you got to deal with the fact that is it working within the organ network, or is it working for just one specific organ? You see, and so when we start looking at that, yeah, that it does give you energy because it increases circulation. Anything that has to do with your sex drive, whether it's man or woman, it creates circulation. So it's going to open up. It's going to allow the blood vessels to open up. It's going to allow for the blood to flow. Okay. And yeah, it's a good herb, but you can't abuse it. Because when you abuse it and it becomes toxic, then it reverses on you. So then you start to see side effects that you don't know where they're coming from. And then you gotta work with the fact of what are you mixing it with. I have a couple of formulas that I use it with, but I use it so that it increases. For instance, it'll increase. It'll help to reduce varicosity. Varicosity has to do with veins, varicose veins, and things of that nature. But you got to understand how much of it you're going to take, how much of it will your body absorb, and how much of it your body won't absorb. That's why you start to take it off in in small cases, especially if you don't have issues with it, and test it and see how it works in your body. See what you get from it, because of the fact that it has to be digested as well in the body.
Right. Now vitamin D3 or vitamin D, which one, and I guess I want to phrase it as has an effect on the brain. I know that okay, so it plays a role with melanin production.
Right.
And so the pineal gland produces out neuromelanin that repairs all the nervous systems through your body. Now, that melanin, that EU melanin, when sunlight hits in the morning, it converts into serotonin, which gives you the energy, gives you the hypeness, gives you the clear mind. And then, of course, when sun begins to set, it turns into melatonin, where you're now ready to sleep. A lot of people who are deficient, and this must come from white people, because I wonder why black people will need to take melatonin anyway. But what I was studying was that people who were lacking melatonin or wasn't producing melatonin was lacking vitamin D.
And that's the truth, because you gotta understand it also deals with the parathyroid, okay, which now can have an effect on the thyroid, which the thyroid now is one of the glands from the pineal gland, okay, that has to do with that ductless gland system. Yeah. That ductless gland system is very powerful. When we start talking about the thymus, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, all of those are glands that assist us in homeostasis. The hypothalamus, which is what we really allows for the pituitary and the pineal gland, and especially the pineal gland, to get that raise that's going to turn that to be able to make that transferase from the sun into serotonin and then into melatonin. And so one of the things that happens is that when people take melatonin, you know, the piece that people talk about is that they crash, but the wake up is terrible.
Right. Yes.
Okay. The wake up is terrible. And that's because of the fact that the vitamin D that they needed to help with that, they either exacerbated it, or they increased it so much that when they got up, it just wore them out. It's like you sitting down and eating dinner, and when you get finished eating dinner, you can't move because of the fact that you're so full. See, so when you start looking at the factors of the ductless gland system, that's the spiritual healing system of the body. Okay, there's a course and a class that I do on healing through the ductless gland system. Okay, because the ductless gland system is powerful. The lady asked about fibroids. One of the pieces that you have to deal with is the fact that what's happening with the ductless gland system that's part of that whole stagnation of the uterus, that's causing the piece that's going on in your uterus, which are called fibroids. Okay. And so when we start to talk about that, what we're talking about is we're talking about the fact that if we begin to reestablish the balance of the organ network, okay, what are we talking about? We're talking about the ability for the healing to happen. Okay, that's what we talk about. And so if that's the case, then how are we going to make sure that the body is being fortified with the nutrients that we need? I mean, just think about it. What are you putting in your body? And is what you're putting in your body providing you with what it is that you need in order for your body to maintain life? And so when we start talking about the ductless gland system, we have to talk about the fact that how do those hormones function? Person asked about I like to say when men comes to pause, about that also has to do with what's going on with the ductless gland system and their ability to absorb and assimilate vitamin D. And copper, copper aids in the central nervous system. It aids in the brain. It aids in the healing qualities of the body. Some of the foods you can get it from are things like avocados, spinach. Spinach is one of the foods that you can get it from. Asparagus. And asparagus, when you take in asparagus, when I was young, I had a hard time pronouncing that word. I did. I had a real hard time pronouncing the word asparagus. But asparagus can go into the body and begin to help with the cleansing process. That's why you smell the aspartame when you urinate after you've taken in asparagus, because it's working through the kidneys. Vitamin D works through the kidneys and the liver, to maintain the balance with the kidneys, to maintain the balance of the water and the fire, and with the liver, it maintains the balance of how the liver detoxifies and how it absorbs the calcium, because the blood is stored in the liver. The other piece about copper is the fact that coconut water, we should be people of African descent. We should be drinking coconut water on a regular basis, because it's going to hydrate us, and when it hydrates us, it's going to kick that it's going to kick that copper and that vitamin D in our system, and it's going to help to maintain the balance of the acid alkaline balance. That's part of what vitamin D does with the calcium and the phosphorus. It aids in the balance of the acid alkaline, so that the acid alkaline now has a balance, where the blood now has a 7.35 to 8 pH balance, and the blood is able to receive the nutrients. So you want to be able to, when you start taking things, you want to make sure of several things. One is that whatever you're taking gets to the root cause of what's going on with you. That's the first thing. If you take the maca, look up and see what it does and see if it functions for you. Second, when you start to take things, whether it's pharmaceuticals or it's herbs, and be real understanding that herbs can be just as toxic and just as deadly as pharmaceuticals. So don't think because you're taking an herb that the herb is all safe. Oh no, people have taken herbs and died from them.
Speaking of that, I've noticed that in some formulas in herbs are not supposed to go together.
Yeah.
And yet you see them in these popular brands.
No question. No question. That's why I make my own herbs for people.
Yeah.
You know, because of the fact that people they just drive, you know, like there was a time, this was several years ago, when ephedrine, we call it mahuang, somebody put out that was the piece that gave you energy. It helped your reproductive system, you know, it helped you go longer, da 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 da. And so people started taking it. Well, the recommendations in the Chinese medical pharmacopoeia says you shouldn't take over 9 grams. People were taking 25 and 50 grams and having heart attacks. Okay. And so what happens is the factor that you overload your body. And when you overload your body now begins to figure out what to do with it or what not to do with it, and it'll stop your heart. And you should give 90 days, 90 to 120 days of taking something. And in some cases, you know, you should start off with small increments and build them up into the system. Okay. But you should always monitor your body to find out, and don't be mixing stuff. You know, people just like to mix this with that, and then when something happens, you don't know what caused it. When people take my formulas, I often tell them that if you take my formula and you decide to take something that somebody else gives you, stop taking my formula. Because of the fact that when you stop mixing them chemicals together, what happens? What begins to happen is the fact that now your body has to react to it. And that reaction could be a cardiac arrest. You die. You see? So, you know, I mean, the piece is to make sure that when you're taking stuff, you know why you're taking it. Don't take it because your friend said, well, I'm taking it, you should take it. Don't take it like that. Your friend's body is different than yours. Find out if you should take it. When I started this back in 1974, there wasn't no internet. You know, that's why I got a library full of books. You know, there wasn't no internet. I couldn't, if I wanted to look up something, I had to go to a book. Now that we have the internet, you know, internet's dangerous, but it's good. Okay. In some ways, you know, look stuff up. You know, why are you taking that? And that's always why I ask my patients, you know, when they come and say, well, I'm taking da 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 da. Okay, cool. Why are you taking it? See, you should understand and know why you're taking it. You shouldn't be taking it because somebody said, well, this is good for you. I've had 2 patients die because somebody else gave them something that threw their whole body out of whack, and they died from it.
One of the things I noticed with your teaching is that when it comes to herbs, those concentrated herbs, you have a rule of 5 days on, 2 days off. Why is that?
Because what you want to do is, when you take things 7 days a week, including pharmaceuticals, that's why you have so many side effects with pharmaceuticals. It's because it builds up in your body, and your body don't work anymore. When you take things 5 and 2, and I normally tell people, I said, take it Monday through Friday and stop it on Saturday and Sunday. What that does is that gives your body a chance to maneuver whatever you put in it, so that it could begin to identify what it is, and then it can go to work. See, because herbs are not for you to take for a lifetime. Okay. One of the things, and they're basically called phytonutrients. And one of the things about phytonutrients is the fact that phytonutrients are made so that they become supplements to the body. When the body takes on its own persona, what then happens is that then you should stop taking herbs. See, but we don't do that. Okay, we'll take the herbs all the time, all year round. And you got to understand that each season your digestive tract changes, so you have to now begin to adjust the dosage because of the change. And people don't and people don't realize that.
Doc, let's get ready to close out here. Great
right.
combo, man. Great combo. You done laid down a lot of science here. I hope everyone got a lot of information. I hope you shared this. Doc, if any closing you wanna say before we close out?
Well, what I'd like to say is this. You know, summer's coming. Summer is a nourishing cycle. And so what happens is that in the summertime, you know, the peak organs are the heart, small intestines, the pericardium, and the sanjiao, which are the three burning spaces, which has to do with digestion. I would say start to get your digestive tract in order, because this is the time to do that. And to get your body to store your vitamin D during this time, so that it's in your bones, so that in the wintertime you don't have challenges with that, and that it helps to reinforce your DNA. See, because if we can get it to enhance, because it can't change it, it'll enhance our DNA. If we can get it to enhance our DNA and maintain the integrity of our stem cells, then what happens is when pathogens or disharmonies or whatever, or diseases come by our way, they don't have any place to land, because of the fact that we fortified that. This is the time to put that in. See, because the winter is the time to fortify it. The summer mimics the winter, and the winter mimics the summer. And so right now is the time to do that, because now you're working with the summer and you're working with the winter. If you're having fertility issues, this is the season to work on fertility issues. Okay, whether it's ED or whether it's infertility, because this is the time when the blood picks up everything and sends it through the body. If you have fibroids, this is the time to work on them. Your uterus is cold. You need to be able to increase the flow of blood and chi energy within the compounds of your uterus. If you're having excessive menstruation issues, if you're having heart issues, diabetes, inflammation, the summer is the season to work on that. And you can work on that in several different ways. The first thing is to change the foods that you're eating, because of the fact that each season the foods change. You can go to my website and extract a food chart for the summer, or for all 4 seasons if you want. No cost involved. But you should begin to do that, because of the fact that this is the season to do that. The heart has to do with the mind, and it has to do with what we call shin, which is the spirit. So if you begin to work on that now, what happens is that during the fall, see, because now with the heat and you sweat, you open the pores, so now the lungs become strong, and the vitamin D strengthens the lungs, which now strengthens the immune system. And so in the fall, what happens is that you won't see this coughs, colds, and flu and all of that kind of stuff, because of the fact that you've strengthened the lungs through the summer. So now the lungs will oxygenate the blood, which now is another cleansing process for the blood. And that oxygenation is now giving the blood what it needs in order for it to invigorate, so that in the wintertime it can be fortified by the kidneys, so that in the spring it can be cleansed. And yeah, you can rotate herbs during each season, and I do. Each season, people who do my seasonal programs, each season, because a different set of organs are at their peak, each season, what happens is that we change the herbs. Okay, that's like now during this season coming, we'll work on both left and right kidney, which is the right kidney is the fire, the left kidney is the water. We'll work on both of them. We'll work on tonifying the liver's blood, and then we'll work on the factor of boosting digestion. Okay, so we're gonna get any mucus that's in the stomach out, and we're gonna get any mucus that's lodged in the small intestines out, and get the small intestines to begin to absorb nutrients from the food you eat, so that you get more energy, so that you don't have to be drinking these energy drinks, that kind of thing. So, what I would leave you with is the fact that begin to understand your body, begin to understand the chemistry in your body. Find out what your blood type is, because your blood is what rules your body. And then eat foods and take nutrients that are valuable to your blood, and that will allow you to invigorate your entire body, your mind, along with your spirit. Because when you do that, then you begin to talking about healing.
Okay. So last question, when is your next class coming up?
So my next class will be next month. I got a couple of them coming up next month, and I'll let people know when they're coming up. Okay, and what they're on. One of them is on, understanding summer healing. Okay, and understand what is needed for summer healing. I have a diabetes program coming up.
Okay.
That kind of thing. So, and one for long haulers, people who have had COVID-19. Their body got totally pushed to its limits, and so because it was pushed to its limits, the body needs to have certain things to help it back. And that was one of the pieces about the zinc. Okay. The zinc as well as the copper, for them to begin to administer it. And if you're going to take zinc, you got to take copper, because when you take zinc, it displaces copper. So you got to take them so that they're synergistic together. Okay. And vice versa. So that's what I got coming up, and I'll let folks know. Also on the 19th through the 20th, I believe it is, or the 18th through the 20th, I'll be up in New Jersey, Trenton, for the Juneteenth festival.
Okay.
And I'll be the keynote speaker for that, and I'll be talking about long haulers. I'll be actually talking about this coronavirus and some things that we need to do, even if you've gotten a vaccine or you haven't, and if you've had a COVID-19 or you haven't, there are some things that you need to do. Don't think because we got a vaccine out there that everything's free and good again. Oh, hell no. Hell no, because the summer's going to show you that it ain't. That kind of thing. So those are the kind of things that I have going on. And I have a Qigong class that happens on Saturday mornings from 9 to 10. So if anybody's interested, they can contact me, and they can join that class and they can look to see other classes, or they can email at me and I can put them on my list.
Is our next discussion diabetes?
Yeah, we could talk about diabetes. Matter of fact, that was my thesis. Okay. and I wrote a book. I got a book around here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Sweet Mysteries of Life.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, the X is on it, so I know it's mine. I don't sell it.
Okay, everyone. I appreciate everyone for tuning in and listening and sharing. If you need and you want to reach out to Dr. Akmal, you can at his website, www.healingarts.net. His phone number is listed right here, 301-249-2445. I appreciate everyone. And listen, stay well and be healthy, because it's a serious journey.
Be well and enjoy your life as you peacefully walk in health. And I thank you for your time, your energy, and your listening, and your knowledge, as well as who you are. Be well.
Peace out, brother.
Adabo.